And welcome again to another episode of the Civil War Regiments podcast. I've been doing a whole day of filming today with a bunch of different guests. We've talked about a lot of different topics, living history, Civil War in Middle Tennessee and whatnot, and all these episodes will be coming out. But as our grand finale on this recording day, I got all my guests in one room. And hey, we might have a free-for-all panel to get whatever we want off our chests from this hobby. But I have, from left to right joining me, I have Patrick Landrum, Whit Barr, Mike Hoover, and the one and only Chad Phillips, the one and only Lorenz expert.
There are no others.
Yeah, there are no others. And
there is only Chad.
That trending episode that came out a few months ago about the Lorenz, you know. If you Google or type in like Lorenz on YouTube, it's like the second video that comes up. Our interviews.
Chad, like you're big time now, man.
Time now. But hey, thanks everybody for joining me, and I hope you guys have had a fun podcasting. Yeah, we just finished eating. We just had some deer burgers, so that was pretty good. Yeah, I hope so. I hope
absolutely. I won't ever turn away deer.
No. It was good, but no. But you know, to kick things off, we probably should give Chad maybe the floor to maybe share some thoughts since that big interview a few months ago, and anything else that you feel like, I guess I should say, after listening to that episode yourself, do you feel like there's something you missed or you wish you had brought up, or any other details about the Lorenz?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me. Glad to be back. Thinking back on the last time I was here, I feel a whole lot more relaxed this time than I do the last time. Could be because I'm not on camera, however. Thinking back on the Lorenz conversation and video that we had, I think there was probably one thing that you neglected to ask, and it could have been, I think it was. Oh. I think it was maybe the cheek rest. I think we discussed that briefly, but I think we moved on pretty quick from that. And I think your question was all Lorenz wooden stocks made with a cheek rest? And the answer to that question is no. Depends on the contractor in Vienna that was making them. That was totally a thing that was left up to the independent contractor that was making the Lorenz. All the ones that I've seen and personally handled myself that were in the Kaiser's army, the Austrian army, all the ones that I've seen have the cheek rest on both the Type 1s and the Type 2s. So I just wanted to go back to that conversation and that video and thinking back on some things.
You want to show the cheek some love.
Yeah. Got to put the cheek out there.
That's a cheeky question.
You're a cheeky fellow. Well, very good. I missed that. So, but good. But well, Chad, here's a question for you then. You know, I know the number one gun in the Civil War was the Gatling gun, but would you say the Lorenz is a close second?
The Gatling gun does not even compare to the Austrian Lorenz rifle.
In terms of only having one barrel,
I mean, let me be honest for a minute. If I was in the Army of Tennessee as a Confederate soldier, and there was a Springfield, an Enfield, and a Lorenz, and I'm at Kennesaw Mountain, well, I mean, I'm definitely going to go with the Lorenz.
Well, Mike, tell me something. Wasn't there like how did General Sedgwick get shot? Wasn't that?
Yeah, I heard it was with the Lorenz. Isn't that true?
Yeah.
I think that rifle was the number one killer of Civil War generals.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. Yeah.
They talk about, Sedgwick specifically says, they couldn't hit an elephant at this distance. But if you think back to the Austrians and maybe some of their colonial or empire, their ambitions in Africa, I mean, they had a complete proving ground for that Lorenz to hit elephants. And thankfully, still hit a Sedgwick at a mile away.
Yeah.
So that's no trivial manner when it comes to firearms manufacture, especially the rifling and the ammunition they were using. So, nonetheless, that's what got him, man.
Yeah, it sure is. I went there actually about 2 years ago. I went to the spot where it all happened.
Do they have it marked?
Yeah. Yeah. There's a monument to where that Lorenz hit Sedgwick.
This ambitious SOB got killed here.
Yeah, actually, it was all snowed over when I went. It was like January 2022, and But I went as a tall little monument marker with the Greek cross on top, showing you where Sedgwick got hit.
Man.
But which I was listening to a podcast the other day or something where they kind of like how Sedgwick, that's the only thing he's known for, that poor guy. Like, he was beloved by all his men and everyone had nothing good things to say, but he's only remembered in history for
You only screw up
his
once.
final moment. And it's like, it's one of those things where you just hope you don't say something stupid before you die, you know?
Well, he nailed it.
Oh, man.
It's definitely the "I'm too drunk to taste this chicken" quote of the Civil War.
Well, you know, one thing that we talked about after the fact with Pat's episode was, you know, I would like to touch on the fact that you were in that photo shoot about preservation of Franklin, where you said, I think that was like 15 years ago or so. Was it Time Magazine that did it?
Yeah, it was 2009, and we actually did a shoot in let's see, we were in Nashville, and then we did a shot down in Spring Hill where we're like peeking over. We're in a Starbucks parking lot, peeking over a fence at the photographer, and that, you know, this is right off of Columbia Pike, which is, you know, the main road of travel. So, and then the one that made it in the magazine is me and Justin Pope are sitting in front of the Domino's, like at night, and like we have an open pizza, and it's supposed to be this juxtaposition about battlefield preservation.
Yeah.
And it was Rob Hodge worked on it with Time, and I cannot remember the photographer's name, but they did pieces around Spotsylvania and Virginia and everything.
They're
like
really well done.
The guy's an award-winning photographer,
Yeah.
and was super, super nice the entire time. But yeah, that's one of the oddest things in my life is, you know, I was in Time Magazine. So
That's crazy.
And that was probably not the first time that he and Pope sat outside that Pizza Hut with an open box of pizza on it. Oh, sorry, yeah, Domino's. You know, nonetheless, not the first time for sure.
You know, well, speaking of photo shoots, like, do you feel like, or did any of you guys? I haven't been part of many, but recently I was. But do you have any stories? Any of you have been in any movie or documentary film shoots, and any stories behind any of that? There's been quite a few over the years. I know.
the only one, I personally don't do them anymore. It's just to me, it's a hassle.
Yeah.
But when we did the video for the video for Vicksburg, we had to do a scene where it's like a Confederate marching through town, asking for a piece of bread from some citizen, and like the person that they picked to be the Confederate was Brian DeRoche, because I mean he looks like a Confederate soldier, and he's walking up, and like, Kevin Hirschberger was the director, and they're like, all right, just walk up to her and take the bread, and Brian goes up and like, kind of like Ricky Bobby, like, I don't know what to do with my hands, and he's like, cut, we're gonna do that over again. He's like, kind of go up there and take it with some purpose. So like Brian's like, oh, okay, and he just goes up there and like snatches the bread from the chick's hand like he's robbing her. He's like, no, and like this goes on like 4 or 5 more takes, and like, Brian's patience level is like nanoseconds long, so he's getting irritated like with every single take on it. Finally, when he gets done, he's like, man, I can't believe you talked me into doing this stupid crap. I'm like, oh, all right. So like we go on, and there's a scene in the movie that actually, both of these actually made the cut for the interpretive film, but I'm in a tent with the guy that's playing Grant, and we're sitting at a table and looking at a map, and the guy doesn't hardly know anything about Civil War, and like he just looks at me and is like, as we're looking down at the maps, he goes, "What? And where's the Iron Brigade?" And like
right next to the Burdett sharpshooter.
The audio doesn't pick this up, obviously, but like Brian's sitting outside, and I just like look up from the table and look at him like he's grown 2 heads, and I'm like,
in Gettysburg, and like you can see it in the still frame of like this pause of me like, did you just spit in my face? Like,
oh man, have you been in?
I've been in
a few, haven't you?
Notably, with almost everybody here.
I know everyone here was probably in that Chickamauga one.
Oh God, yeah. Shiloh.
Oh yeah.
Chattanooga
was all over all those too.
Oh my gosh, that was a big kind of deal for a lot of guys in Northwest Georgia and Southeast Tennessee and Northeast Alabama, and the pay was somewhat decent actually.
Yeah.
But the downside was, and the films that I took part in were all the anniversary or replacements for the older National Park System movies on each particular battlefield. And so I was graduating high school, or still in high school for, I think, Shiloh. And then, the rest of the movies that we did were, I was in college at the time and thankfully had enough time and not a whole ton of money, but enough time to go to these kinds of things.
Yeah.
And like it is a very interesting thing to do because there are great parts about it. And then there's some very, very bad parts. Like, at least with this particular company, they were really bad about putting fake dirt and fake blood all over you.
Overdone.
And so, I get it. You've got a group of people who have never studied the Civil War. They probably can tell you everything about cinematography, camera angles, lighting. I wouldn't ever question their ability. But when it came to, making Civil War soldiers look like they'd been there, it wasn't always good, and the research didn't follow through. So, for example, like when McCook, we were filming a scene where McCook is leading the charge, up Kennesaw Mountain, or up against Confederate breastworks, and of course he gets killed. Aaron Price was playing McCook.
Oh wow! Yeah.
And then I was portraying a man from Illinois. Oh God, I can't remember the guy's name. Is it the individual who actually yanked McCook back? He yanked the coattails back. But they came by and put dirt all over us. There was blood. They did this. They would have like a Brillo pad almost, and they would dip in this fake blood, and then they'd come scratch it on your face to look like you'd run through a thorn bush. But the bad thing is that they would do it to everybody.
Yeah.
And it's like there's not any thorns behind us. And this unit hadn't, they had clean new uniforms, so there was no dirt. They weren't all wounded at this point. They were fresh to the battle. So, you were having to argue against this mentality of, I know that, dirty signifies Civil War to you, but it wasn't necessarily accurate for that filming. But, there was a lot of shenanigans that happened. It was just like a big college party. All of them were, every one of them.
I do feel that in overall, documentaries seem to have better quality than the movies lately, though. Because, unfortunately, it seems like Hollywood can never get it right. But
they don't want to.
We've had a lot of,
I think with the Last Full Measure kicking off and Gavin Thomas being in charge of, recruiting reenactors. Yeah, I think that's going to be a good project.
I can't wait for Robert Duvall to reprise his role too. So that would be
is
wonderful.
He still alive?
No, I'm not sure.
I thought he had passed.
Yeah,
okay. He's going to convince you differently behind the camera.
All right. Yeah.
Yeah, you got me. I completely forgot. Herb Coates would have called me out on that faster than you, man.
Oh, speaking of which, about how some of these documentaries, of course, some of them, there's only 50 or 20 reenactors that they have, and so they have to switch uniforms. And so I love how the Chickamauga Chattanooga video, there's that scene where it's the Federals charging up Missionary Ridge and Herb's leading the assault.
Oh yeah.
And then it switches over to the Confederates retreating, and Herb's the first Confederate that they show running. But it's literally shot by shot. So it's Herb charging up the hill.
Oh,
the very next shot is Herb running away.
That's a really good point to bring up, because continuity in all of those films was very hard for that company to achieve, especially working with the subjects that they did. And I would be subject matter or the epitome of one of the people who contributed to the, continuity issues, where I wanted to be in these prominent positions in the shot and everything. So I could point out to my parents, hey, all this money I wasted on this hobby. Well, now I'm on big screen,
go.
you know. That,
Yeah.
But that was always an issue, and they finally started getting people to babysit and make sure that these reenactors wouldn't get into these scenes. And so, like at one scene, I am loading and firing a musket through the breastworks at Kennesaw Mountain, and on the other side, I am yanking down Aaron Price as General McCook. Samuel Canterbury was the guy's name that yanked McCook off. That's who I was portraying. But so that was very interesting, to say the least.
Yeah.
And there were times where I talked about continuity being an issue, and the accuracy. Like we at one point showed the 21st Ohio attacking the breastworks, and Brad Quinlan, who wrote probably one of the more definitive books on the 21st Ohio and their service during the war, kind of like came out and said, "Well, that's not how any of this happened. I don't know who came up with this scene, but there's a book that literally tells you exactly how they fell, where they were at, what their casualty numbers were, and we can replicate that here." And they argued with him at first, from what I remember, and didn't want to do it. And thankfully, they kind of came around, I think, at the urging of Lee White and Jim Ogden. Don't quote me on that, but that was also another interesting thing where you'd have to tell them, "Hey, that didn't happen," and like, we know it didn't.
Yeah.
Firsthand, accounts are real, but those, they were a lot of fun, to say the very least.
Man, I can't remember. I don't know why that just reminded me of that Civil War video game that came out. This was maybe 10 years ago, or maybe 15. It was Activision did it, or the same people did Call of Duty. Yeah. But like literally every scenario, whether it was Shiloh or Gettysburg or Chickamauga, there was Gatling guns on every battlefield. And hand grenades. So you automatically were supplied with 5 grenades. And you're running around, and it's like one man fights going on, and it's the most horrendous thing ever. But I'm like they're just trying to make Civil War Call of Duty kind of thing, but it just goes to show the confusion there.
That's the fastest I've ever seen a Colt revolving rifle get reloaded. In that game. It took a matter of about 2 seconds. Okay, well, all right then.
Yeah. Always.
Yeah, I did a lot of those same photo shoots that Whit was at.
Yeah.
And when they apply like the dirt, it's meant to, show up well on camera. Yeah. It's not like, real dirt you can just kind of pat off. You have to really try to scrub it out.
Oh.
And even the blood is like basically syrup that they're pouring on you.
So did you get a lot of your gear ruined?
Yes, actually on one of my blankets I still have a blood stain from, 12 years ago.
Yeah.
But the way they apply the dirt, if you can imagine a beanbag that they dip in this powder and then basically pat you with it.
Yeah.
Well, we had actually just all cleaned ourselves up because it was supposed to be over. And they're like, wait, we need to do one more scene, but we need 6 people. Yeah. So they picked me and a friend of mine named Bart out to go do it. So we got to go up there. And of course, they're caking everyone in dirt. It looks like we just wallowed in it. And Bart gets up there and the lady's like, I'm going to do something real big with you. And, keep in mind, he's just cleaned himself. So he's like, I really wish you wouldn't. And she just glared at him. And the director's like, just give him a little. And she took that beanbag and literally just wailed on his face. It looked like he tripped and fell. And just...
Oh my gosh.
There's another scene in the Kennesaw film. There's a bunch of dead Federals outside the works. And Scott Linden, he was kind of I guess you call him the military coordinator.
Okay. Yeah.
Anyway, if you were dead laying face up, he went and poured water on your crotch. But I was kind of just laying there relaxing, and all of a sudden I get this big thing of water just poured on me. I'm like, what do I do with this? He goes, it's life's last joke. It's okay.
You don't want to know what he was doing if you were laying down.
Yeah.
What he was going to do to you after that.
Yeah, you got to keep your eyes open. Yeah. I don't know what I'm about to get hit with.
Time. Oh, man. Chad, were you in any of those movie shoots?
Not those movie shoots. I was in one documentary series on Discovery. It's called the Ultimate Civil War series, season 1. I'm in episode 2. A Deep Steady Thunder. I believe, if I recall, this was taken.
Do you have an IMDb page?
Well, no, I've got my best side.
Hey,
I
look at
brought
that.
receipts, so
Look at that.
shows me firing at
Yeah.
the Federal Army. And then there's 2 movies I was in briefly. I was in Andersonville, and I was in Home, Alabama. Yeah, I was in both of those, but it was really brief. When I say brief, they pitched it to us reenactors as the movie company as, oh, you'll be in a frame, and we thought a frame was like the movie theater. You'd be able to really pick me out, but little did I know a frame is literally 1 to 3 seconds, which is what I was in there, about 1 to 2 seconds, and it shows me walking from one side of the TV screen to the other, left to right or right to left. I don't really recall, but that's when I thought Reese Witherspoon was hot back then, when she was a whole lot younger back then compared to now. So,
which they filmed that one at the old Bridgeport reenactment.
It was at the Atlanta
Sweet
Horse
Home?
Park up in Conyers, where they had the '96 Olympics. That's where it was located. Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah, they was up there for a day, and we had to sign this paperwork saying that, we couldn't come back and request money from the movie or the movie company if, we'd sign these release forms. So I think I missed my chance to, get millions.
Oh well.
But I mean, you know me, I'm sitting here.
Yeah, there you go. So that's why you're making millions now. Hey, or did you have another thought?
I was going to tell you, I don't know if they've ever gotten it, but I usually get like random emails for movies. So I got one for Abraham Lincoln Vampire Slayer. I was like, how do I nicely tell these people this sounds like it's going to be crap and I don't want any part of it?
Maybe you missed an opportunity.
I was going to say, no, people that did it, you got $1,000 to be there for a week, and they put you up in a 5-star hotel in New Orleans.
Yeah.
And then they basically said they got a bunch of hipsters because they looked like, Civil War soldiers. Yeah. And then the interactions they had with them.
Yeah. That's what campaigning is. Hipsters and homeless people all blended together. So, one conversation I think would be maybe to kind of highlight the better moments of our hobby is maybe each of you share, all of you have been reenacting for years, but maybe share one moment from one event you attended that just like this is real. This is what it was like. Like this comes full circle for me and everything I've read about and witnessed. And Mike, you have the mic if you have one, or you could pass the mic if you want to still think about it.
I was going to say, I've had quite a few. I was at the 98 Gettysburg where they had like 30,000 reenactors.
Yeah.
And even though I'm not all of them, I know a lot of them were farbs and whatnot, but just seeing 2 full-scale battles going on at the same time, just that many people in a field shooting at each other, I don't think I'll ever see again.
Yeah, no, you're not.
But I don't know. I guess that one in my head always sticks out.
Well, for numbers, like, we get a lot of like regiment versus regiment scale things, but when you have that's like a corps versus a corps scale, if it was like 30,000 or so guys, and when you think of the numbers there, so if there was 30,000 at that reenactment, and the actual Gettysburg there was like 150,000, and if it seems overwhelming like that, then times that, it's crazy. So yeah, we don't get many of those moments, and so even though it seems like the mainstream events are best for giving that idea, at least of just seeing huge brigade formations and battalions and stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
Stephen, I'd agree with Mike on that. I haven't seen that many soldiers on the field at one time. I was in awe looking at all these Federals that kept coming over the hill and all the different battalion flags, and they just kept coming, and to me it appeared to be groves, just like coming out of the wood line. They just kept coming, like there was no end to it. So that was a moment for me.
Yeah. Any moments with Lorenz that you want to talk about?
I didn't have one back then.
Okay, those are your those are the ones you keep to yourself.
Yeah, that's the secret, the big secret.
Thank you.
I was at the 135th Gettysburg too, but the one that sticks out, and Brian and I've joked about this one, was when I was a kid. They used to do mainstream battles at Blakely, and this was in like 95 or 96, and I'm out in the rifle pits on the, pre-battle. And this is obviously back when the hobby was much, much bigger. So there's, they would only let a certain number of guys register Confederate, and everybody else you did Federal. So when the Federals come out of the 15th Mass, it's just this massive sea of blue. And, we're in the rifle pits, and they tell us, just wait. And when they get to this certain portion in the bowl, basically where the advanced pits are, that we need to start running back. And so they get to that point, and me and the guy that I was in the pit with jump up and start running. Well, what we didn't know is that they had air bursts and ground charges, because that was still a thing in the hobby. So it looks like the episode of Band of Brothers. I'm literally terrified at 12 years old, running for my life. It's all these huge big chunks of clay are falling out of the sky from this. I'm it's just trying to zigzag and not get hit by debris.
Wow.
There's that, and it's, stuff we talked about. I cooked at one of the Liberty Rifles winter quarters at their old campsite in Virginia, and you walk out it was Andrew Kazmar was there with me, and Rich Taddeo, and we come out of the cook's hut, and just it's pitch black, and you can hear guys start to get up and stir, and the camp coming to life, the horses doing whatever, and that was a cool this is what it was like during the war, more times than not.
Yeah. See how it's not always the battles, it's it's a lot of little things like that, or seeing I know Rosecrans Pursuit had a moment for me where we're away from anything modern, but at one point our company's just on this, we stack arms and we're collecting firewood, and we're just trying to make a quick fire for cooking lunch. But at the same time we're doing that, commissary is unloading a bunch of stuff. There's activity over there. First section is driving by in their wagons, and it feels like we're right along the road where all the traffic is going. And it felt like this feels like a pause in a march where it's the whole army is moving through. And so just little moments like that would just feel you're sitting. Whit, how about you, man?
I'll give you just a handful of them, but maybe it's, obviously it's not an entire event kind of feeling, it's only just moments at a time. I remember at the 2013 150th anniversary of Gettysburg, and Pat, I think everybody in this room was there. But there was the Culp's Hill portion where it was just kind of a private deal, and a lot of the Union reenactors I knew, or that were up at the top of the hill, I knew. So it wasn't like I was, charging against these strange reenactors I'd never met. But my particular unit, we were down at the bottom of the hill, and we were frying bacon or something, and I was cooking. And then I started hearing this random pot shots take off, and then the gunfire starts building up a little bit more. And then I look up, and there's, the Armory Guard had put their company into action. There's this, and then I look up, and other companies had joined them, and there's just this gray wall engulfed in smoke. The lighting, the sun had gone down, and the light is starting to go away even faster. And so getting to make that assault up the hill, there were times where just, I'm there. And I don't think I'd be the only one that said that about that particular spot during that reenactment. Another one would be when we did the 150th Shiloh. I did the 15th Iowa contingency with Woodburn, and some people would say, "Oh, is riding the riverboat down the river and landing it." Pittsburgh
cool.
Landing is cool, absolutely. But every moment I was on that boat, I was like, yeah, I get it. There's some modern fixtures in this boat. It's kind of ruined it for me, but whatever. But, on the way from, where we camped at Pittsburgh Landing to the reenactment site, we would it would just be the unit. We'd be marching through the woods. And there were at least about 400 guys that went and did this. And so this is one of the larger units that had kind of gotten compiled that I had seen. And so there's one shot, I think you can see it all over Facebook for some of the guys that were there. Yeah, but there's a dip. You can see this picture, and there's a line, and all you can see are guys from where the camera is to the end of the very top of the photo. Yeah. There's no end to it. And then marching out of the woods and looking left and right and seeing an entire line of guys that look identical to you. I think that's something that doesn't get to happen too often in the hobby, where everybody fit the uniform. Every identical stuff. Yeah, full scale as well. So that was kind of a very neat one. I had another one. I can't think of what it was. Must not have been that memorable.
But there haven't been many occasions like that where you have a full scale regiment.
Yeah.
It seems like, especially on the mainstream side, if you do have that amount of guys, it's several battalions all come bubbled together. But but to have a full regiment like that, everybody looking the same, and I wish I still hit my head for not being there. I wish I was part of that.
Oh, so many good stories that came out of that, man.
Yeah.
That was a great event. Although the heat kind of sucked.
Well, and it was in April too, right?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think we started out with like 30 or 40 guys or something in our company, and then by the time we got to the battlefield, there was like 25 of them.
But like that's the thing about April events, is either going to be really hot or really cold, depending on where you're at,
or both.
Or both. Yeah, in the same event.
Freezes at night, and then it gets hot during the day.
It's crazy. We've been in a lot of weird circumstances. I guess, that's another. Talking about maybe a negative again, but like, what was the most miserable outdoor experience that we have had in this hobby that was just like, I don't know, like we don't have to spend too much time on that. Like anybody, if there's one time where it just felt like, oh my gosh, like this is like the worst that they went through, these guys, possibly. There's too many of those.
Man.
So no Whit was there, but Wahatchee in 2017.
That's the one I was thinking.
That's the one I think everybody's thinking.
It rained from.
It was a
probably
cold,
like
cold
it was
rain.
a cold rain too, but it was like 7 a.m. till for the rest of the day.
Yeah.
It actually soaked my ground cloth that I was had draped over me.
Yeah.
Soaked through my wool jacket, and it soaked my shirt.
Yeah.
We had to actually go through like it's basically a cow pond at one point. It's actually warmer than the water like falling on me.
Yeah.
That's totally miserable. The battle ended up making up for it, but most of the day I was like, why do I do this?
You remember they made us load before. I mean, we didn't see any not a single Confederate until it was dark, and then obviously you definitely didn't see them other than their gunfire. But like they told us to load while it was pouring rain, and like gunpowder and water definitely don't mix unless you're trying to make some kind of like black paint.
A lot of guys ruined a lot of rounds that weekend.
Well, one officer that ordered everybody to do it ruined everybody's rounds. Made their guns inoperable.
One other thing that happened from that, and I guess it wasn't period, but we saw that they had like this like houses or cabins, whatever, on the hill inside our works.
Yeah.
And we found out they had lighter fluid behind one. So it's actually kind of a period moment because we got one of our guys to sneak in there and go steal the lighter fluid out of their house so we get the fire going.
Well, I'm trying to remember too, like not many guys in the battalion actually had fires at that event or could keep one.
Yeah.
And I want to say the Army Guard fire.
We kept ours, but we cheated a little.
Yeah, because I was just going and stealing from people's fires, just taking.
Then
I was pretending to visit each company just so I could try to get warmth from whatever people had.
Then, as miserable as we were, this guy was like trying to make you sign forms for like firewood.
Oh yeah.
And Whit had probably the best request I've ever seen.
Oh, so they had an enormous amount. No, they had an enormous amount of firewood where we were in that like Friday night in this field, and people just started going and getting firewood so that they would have enough firewood to go through the night. And we figured we just wouldn't leave anything, so that would be less for the organizers to clean up. And then they started trying to maintain the firewood supply, which I get. And Jeff Williams, who was in my company that weekend, got a piece of paper out of a notebook I had and a pencil, and he drew a hand with a middle finger just like this, and it said, I'm just going to take what I want. Which I could say that happened at any number of reenactments.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh man. I remember I was totally miserable that whole weekend, man.
Oh yeah.
And I can't believe I made it home in one piece because I decided to drive the 5 hours home that night when it all ended. And I don't even remember half the drive.
Man.
And like once you got that heat going in the car, it was like I should have pulled over somewhere. Just
So I was going to say that was the very last time I felt like I was in the Civil War was during the battle at night, because there was so much smoke from the gunfire, and it was so like the humidity, you could cut it just by looking at it, I guess. And like having to shout, the artillery was right next to us. I mean, but that was the highlight of that event. And then I remember, just like you, like I lived in Chattanooga at the time, and Herb Coates, who lives in one of the 3 counties that forms Atlanta. I think it's Gwinnett that he's living in at the moment. So he didn't want to drive all the way back to Atlanta. And I said, well, hey, man, you can just stay at my apartment. And I don't remember vast swaths of the drive home. And I remember waking up behind the wheel. It was that bad. Somebody had some kind of gift. They were like, hey, man, stop by the hotel before you go back to Chattanooga. I got something for you. Turns out they were going to give me a musket, which it's like making all my dreams come true. I was so tired. I was just like, man, screw this. I'm going home. But, nonetheless, that was,
it kind of goes to show, like, we can't control what Mother Nature is going to do any given time. But, like, the amount of years it takes to plan some of these events. Because I remember I was in on some of the organizing. At the same time, they were preparing stuff. Like Andrew Jerem, all these guys, Ivan, like working for 2 years ahead of time. And just to see something get rained out sometimes, it's a frustrating feeling, because like these things, we don't all, I think sometimes people forget the logistics that go behind these events, and how there's a lot of work. There's a lot of hard work and sacrifice that goes behind preparing the site, getting everything ready, the food.
More than most of the guys at the event ever see.
And for it to be a downpour or a blizzard or what have you, or a tornado, God forbid, whatever happens, you just can't control that sometimes. And I know, like, anyway, there's so many like that. But we still enjoy the highlights. We still do it. We still come back to keep enjoying.
We've got too much money in it at this point. I guess. Just don't want to blow that investment.
But going, we talk about we've obviously talked about a lot of events that have happened the last couple of years, a lot of events that are coming up next year. But I think all of us, in the back of your mind, you always have ideas floating around. And so, like, for each of you or any of you, like, do you have an event that you, like, wish somebody would do? And, like, or a regiment that you would like to see portrayed, or like a battlefield that hasn't really done anything that you really like to do an event on?
Stephen, I would like for some of the organizers to think strongly on maybe doing maybe Georgia Militia, maybe 1864 Atlanta, and what the Georgia Militia, what they were able to bring, which wasn't much, but have some guys or have a unit portraying the Georgia Militia in between Atlanta and Macon.
Joe Brown's Pets.
Joe Brown's Pets, yeah. So I that's one of the things that I think that would be something different for a change. Other than the standards that we're always doing.
You guys did a few. I missed both of them, I think, but in the last few years, I think the AG did a few, like, militia recruiting events, or like it was like you guys had a drill weekend, but everyone kind of just, you did your militia impressions.
Yeah. We did that. Robbie Mitchell, shout out to Robbie Mitchell if he's listening, but he's really good at anything Georgia Militia. He's well versed and educated on anything and everything Georgia Militia.
You guys did militia at Bummers, didn't you?
They did do some Georgia Militia there. I do recall some Georgia Militia being there.
Sure I saw Robbie as a militia.
You probably did.
Guard by him, I think.
You could have been.
Which is actually segue really quick. I just remembered, didn't you guys, or the two of you, or maybe just Whit, do that Zuoff impression at Bummers?
Yeah, we both did.
And what was that unit? And what
12th
else?
Indiana. It was those were their veteran jackets they got for reenlisting.
Yeah.
And the original guys absolutely hated them.
Okay.
They threw them away to the point where the regiment was going to assess fines for the cost of the jacket. They found that they had thrown it out.
A lot of them had said it was like kind of cheaply made and wasn't worth. It wouldn't sound like a lot now, but we'll say $8 that they paid. But that's like half a month's salary they paid for a jacket they didn't like.
That they didn't ask for.
Yeah, they were just told you're going to buy this and wear it.
Like, that looked like a cool impression.
Yeah,
like that was pretty neat. Did you guys have like a whole company outfitted like
that?
Yeah. Wow. Do you still have your uniforms?
I do.
Mine. Yeah. Like, do you ever wish you could repeat that sometime?
Yeah.
We
talked about it.
We discussed doing it at like Resaca or somewhere like
Yeah.
that.
Oh, make a
That's-
battalion with the 8th Missouri.
Oh yeah, that's true. Just have one big Zoo-Ov fantasy unit, like at that Gettysburg event.
Yeah, Resac after dark. Bring out all.
That's when everybody brings out their true colors.
Yeah.
Their Zoo-Ov colors.
But yeah, do you have an event that or something you'd like to recreate that's never been done?
Man, I've got one that I've toyed with just in my head about setting up a scenario surrounding a blockhouse or multiple blockhouses and Confederate attempts to kind of wipe them away. Those guarding railroads in Middle Tennessee or guarding railroads anywhere or thoroughfares, bridges, that kind of stuff. So it would be kind of nice to find that kind of scenario, that could be, pulled off. I don't know exactly how well we could find land next to a railroad track where we could do that kind of stuff. I get the impression some of these railroad companies own a certain amount of land to the left and the right of these tracks, and they don't really want to accept that kind of risk. But there's probably some way to implement that. But that would be something I'd like to get put together at some point. I don't know when.
I'd like to see almost a unit on unit like Hoover's Gap event.
Oh,
I don't know where you would do it, but it's kind of like, you could have a little Wilders contingent.
Yeah, you could.
Or an excuse for guys to bring out some Spencers and whatnot, and then have the 20th Tennessee was there, or one of the regiments.
They got shot up pretty bad there.
And my ancestor was there, and the Eufaula Artillery was the Confederate artillery support.
We did in 2013 for the 150th anniversary at Chickamauga. I went out with Myers Brown organized a unit of horsemen to do Wilder's mounted infantry, and at Wilder's Tower, that monument in the park. And so it's easy enough to be done. And they're probably the only issue is ever finding enough horses and guys that want to, burn their entire paycheck to drive a horse trailer to an event, pay for all the blanks for their round, their ammo, all the tack and everything. So it would be a pricey endeavor to do it, but it has been done, putting together an accurate portrayal of Wilder's. I think we only had maybe about 5 or 6 horsemen, and that was doing it pretty well. And everybody had the full infantry rifle, some mixes of civilian and federal tack on these horses. So that's something that could potentially be done. If you were trying to portray them while they were on foot, that would be kind of easy to do.
That's where you live, right? Hoover's Gap.
Different set of Hoover.
Oh, okay. Different Hoovers.
I do live there. It's just no relation.
2 events I think would be cool, and they wouldn't even necessarily involve fighting. But one, I would like to actually try to build a pontoon bridge, which I know would be a small fortune to do that. But just actually getting the pontoons to a body of water and construct a bridge over it
Just
that you could actually walk.
Body of water.
Yeah. Another one that I've talked to with a few of my friends, but we just like a long range signal corps event.
Yeah.
Like where you could even be like a mile or so from the next one and actually kind of almost like play like telephone. Like first one will send a message and you guys see if it makes it to like the other 3 posts.
Maybe
with
have
exact,
like a 2-company battalion in between somewhere, and they're the ones that
see if they actually do what they were instructed to do. But I know like I actually got the idea because during the occupation of Middle Tennessee, like right after Stones River, I think so it started at Roper's Knob in Franklin, and I know I could see 6 miles out, but that's where the Franklin post started, and I think the Murfreesboro one ended at the courthouse, but they had, I think, 8 signal stations, and they said they could relay a message. I want to say it was in like 45 minutes or something via signal.
Yeah.
But just seeing how fast you could get it going to the last post, and if it would, was correct.
Yeah.
I just think that would be kind of interesting to do.
That would be. Wow. There's a lot.
I'm kind of tapped out. Yeah.
It's a long day of podcast. Those burgers. We're feeling the burgers.
And I'm kind of at the end of my year for creativity. I'm at the point now I just want to see like all the bunks and winter quarters filled. That would be the top for me. AJ's company is not far from doing that. Yeah.
I'm registered. You're registered, right? Yeah.
Yeah. He was. Man, I don't know. I'm such a sucker for third system forts that I'd like to see. And I've messed with Gavin about this after going to Clinch in January. Like, I'd love to see like a large contingent inside of a fort.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that would be cool. Well, Pat, while you have the mic, then you've organized. Do you even know how many that you personally?
No, I was
18 to 40.
No, I was 17 when I put on my first event. Yeah, no, I was 18.
Which one, of all, of course you like all the ones that you do, but I mean, is there a personal favorite that you felt accomplished with? Like, hey, this is the one I'm most happy with.
No, I'm probably like the hardest critic on my events and stuff like that, and that's kind of always been like the unique thing with anybody that's on the organizational team with me. It's like, what could we have done different? Like, I never look at anything as a positive. That's why when like people email and they're happy with how everything went, I'm like, oh, that's great, and like all I see is the negative of it. Yeah. So
unfortunately,
yeah, I mean, I get it, but it's kind of how you challenge and learn is just looking at things that you could have done differently and kind of adapting and overcoming.
The best event is the next event, right?
Yeah, it's yeah. I mean, it's tough. It's getting tougher. I mean, that's definitely I turned 40 a couple weeks ago, and my kids are getting older, and my job is really demanding and stuff like that. So I really like I'm getting to the point in life where like, I don't have time to do it. And it's, I made a joke about it, but it's true. Like I start thinking about like, what can we do? And, it's like, there's some stuff like Fort Duffield in Kentucky is really cool. We've talked about doing that. Seth Hancock really wants to do something at Donaldson again, like portraying like the second assault, not the primary, just something different. Like I would love to do, I know they did the Pickett, Ivan put on the Pickett post at LBL, but I'd want to do something like that. But I've gotten to the point now where like, I want horses out there with us, and there's only limited space where the horses can stay at LBL. So, you get stuck with, restrictions and things like that. It kind of gets difficult.
Oh yeah. And the work that like sometimes I feel like on our hop team, there's so many guys who have a bright idea and they think, oh, wouldn't this be good? And like, this would be easy. And they're not thinking of the logistics and how,
Real small on top and then massive amount below work.
I know that, there's hope for a lot of the guys that do the adjunct stuff that they're going to do like a 160th Franklin, and like, Brandon Jolly and Chris Jebb are going to do like a Confederate brigade there and everything. And, somebody got on there is like, even if we don't, get to do this, we should do our own event. And I'm like, sitting there and like rolling my eyes. I'm like, you're less than a year out. You don't have insurance, you don't have land, you don't have money to do all this stuff. And it's, I have a unique perspective from it because, what my father-in-law did, like he hosted national events, he had to put, took out loans to cover costs of everything. And then had to be like this was back when like the organizations would pass the hat and try to, like everybody talks about Chickamauga, like the North-South Alliance lost money at Chickamauga, like a lot of money. Not like the stuff that's gone on in Gettysburg like this past year, but they still like they had to.
How much did they lose on the Gettysburg this year?
I don't know. It was like over $200,000 or something like that. But and the NSA didn't come anywhere close to that. But I mean, it's it's like they were an organization. They had insurance. They had all this stuff, and it's just like, man, like how are you going to get water for these guys? Just the basics of stuff.
And it seems like something from the organizing perspective too, because the hobby is smaller, obviously, but like it's better to have an event where guys are fighting for a space, than to have this grand open, like, hey, as many guys as we can, because you're always going to end up being disappointed So like in case of winter quarters where, your max is however many you can fit in both barracks, or otherwise you're just sleeping out in the cold.
I think it's 104 in all the buildings.
But, that's reasonable expectations.
Yeah, I mean, it's stuff like, somebody will put up a thread. It's like, what scenario would you like to see? It's like the Battle of Nashville. It's like, good luck. Like if you look at a map and like, like the battle line at Nashville was massive. And like, it's like, well, we could go to Travelers Rest and do a living history. No, the Battle of Nashville. It's like, okay, that's wonderful. Like,
has there ever been like a living history on Shies Hill?
Yeah.
Has anyone done that? Okay.
Yeah.
So there's been stuff there.
The only issue is just like visitorship when you do that, because there's not
much parking there.
I was going to say there's not a ton of parking for people to come up and see you. You're doing it at a cold time of year when people don't really want to get out of the house. But that is one that has been done. I just not in huge numbers for reenactors. You'd have to truck everybody in.
Yeah.
We did, was it for the 150th? We did a program at Travelers Rest where we were like all staff officers or something like that.
Sure did.
And that's a neat site, but it's just a horrible time of year. Just that's like Jacobson gave me a hard time about when, he's like, the anniversary's finally on a Saturday. I'm like, it's like the Saturday after Thanksgiving, man. These guys have families. Like, it takes like the logistical people that, they're like, we get there on Thursday. I'm not gonna like eat turkey and be like, all right, off to Carton. Like,
Liz would be super cool.
Yeah, she'd be real good about
I think
that.
that's the shame
But
with the Stones River too. I mean, who's ever going to do a New Year's Day weekend event?
I'll be the first one to tell you I won't go.
Yeah,
I got stuff going on New Year's.
It's almost like you'd have to do it like a different time of year, but then it's kind of like it just defeats the point, I guess. But I don't know.
They actually do have trouble at the Living History getting people out there because it is always New Year's weekend.
Yeah.
And last year, I think January 1st was on a Sunday, so they actually had to cut it short. So
yeah, people
were just out there New Year's Eve, and that's it.
Yeah. Yeah. Why did they have to fight that battle?
I know they weren't really thinking ahead when people are going to want to celebrate this.
Oh man. Well, guys, we're winding down again, but like, does anyone have any other parting thoughts? Anything on the contemplations? Any last shout outs? Or like even any other book recommendations that you forgot earlier, about any topic, anything in the war, where any other battlefield or book recommendation that you would encourage somebody to go check out? See,
I've got a recommendation on battlefields, which is always the entire city of Chattanooga. There's just every square inch of it was touched. You've got, and the other half of it is, unfortunately, it has been by now. Every square inch of it has just about been developed too, unfortunately. But the areas that aren't, it gives you a lot of perspective. You've got Lookout Mountain, which is a great vantage point to see literally the whole campaign through that valley.
Yeah.
The fighting on Lookout Mountain, the fighting at Orchard Knob, the fighting on Missionary Ridge, the fighting at Wauhatchie. When I was a kid, I used to think Chickamauga was like a long way away from Chattanooga, and it's only like a few minutes. In fact, I lived on Missionary Ridge when I was in college, and that's a battlefield that is almost a complete loss, where there are postage stamp sized reservations. Some of them are called reservations. I would assume they all are, but where they're like, the audience obviously can't see inside this particular studio, but there's one that's maybe about the size of this studio, maybe like a 12-foot by 12-foot. Yeah. I mean, I don't know the logic behind some of them. Maybe somebody had parceled that land out, but it's interesting to see that part of the ridge was blown out to put room for the intersection to come in or to cut through the ridge. So, and then that particular portion of that battlefield, Missionary Ridge is heavily graded, and it was after the war too, to put all these houses up there. But I think, people love Lookout Mountain and the view from there. I think Missionary Ridge is just as important, that kind of realm. And there's just a lot of stuff going on there.
I mean, there was heavier fighting on Missionary Ridge.
Well, you look at like Confederates, that are 15 feet apart because the numbers of those units are so small at that point.
Yeah.
And when you consider that, you think it's odd when you see like something like guys from an Ohio unit in Gary's division getting captured by Confederates, and you thought, God, how piss poor would those troops have been to be captured by an inferior force?
You'll be starving too.
Oh yeah. Oh, big. If you can, they're going to run you all the way to the next battle.
Well, that might be my next field trip. I need to get up to Chattanooga and see all this stuff because I've never been to Missionary Ridge.
Man, I know all the good spots
there. Like, never been to Orchard Knob either.
It is in a rough part of town. That's another interesting. I would say that people need to go view that particular part of the battlefield for this reason alone. At one point, the NPS had completely just abandoned the site, other than they would send tours to that particular block where it is. It is completely surrounded, and they had let it get grown up. Like full-size trees had formed. Had grown up. Privet, kudzu, whatever thick vegetation you can imagine was there, covering monuments and all that.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's the Ohio monument there. They had the Cincinnati Civil War Roundtable coming down there. Well, before that had happened, Jim Ogden, who is one of the park rangers for the Chickamauga-Chattanooga National Battlefield, had gone by there just to kind of take a look at it. And I'm sure he had told the NPS more than once, you need to get over there and clean this stuff up. Like, this is Civil War battlefield. There are monuments. Clean it up. And for whatever reason, the NPS didn't budge. Budgets are probably always an issue with them. But a homeless man, the monument in question is it's like circular. There's like a base, and there are columns around it, and then there's like a little space, and then there's a main kind of center portion of it. And so there's kind of like a round kind of room under, like a porch almost. So this guy got plywood and cardboard and walled off in between each column to make a wall around it, and then found pieces of carpet, or stole pieces of carpet, I don't know where he got it, and lined it all, and then drug a mattress in there and ran a brothel out of that monument. And it was, I'm sure Jim Ogden, after telling the National Park Service they needed to clean this up, took immense pleasure in the NPS getting a huge ass chewing from the Cincinnati Civil War Roundtable. It was either Cincinnati, maybe it was Chicago. I think it was Chicago. It was in the Illinois monument. But nonetheless, they were incredibly upset. And I think the next week, everything was clear cut and it was cleaned off. So if nothing else, go see it before it grows up again.
I've got two. One is remind everybody, when they come to Franklin, if they're going to do, the adjunct, or if they're going to do the Third Mississippi program with us or whatever, to actually take the time and go down to Columbia or go to some of the other historic stuff around Nashville and things like that. I mean, that campaign is so complex, and Columbia is just a great town to spend time in. And I'm going to be like the nerd child growing up. I'm really excited to see what Little Round Top's going to look like when they're finally done with the restoration work. So, I know that I personally want to go back up there and do a guided tour, and when they get everything up, because the pictures look just amazing.
Yeah, man, that's gonna be cool. And it's been so long. It's already been almost 2 years, hasn't it, since they started?
I think so. Yeah. And
it also makes me wonder if it's prolonging too. No telling what all they found up there. They already found it was in the news, the unexploded shell they found, or that was in Devil's Den, I think.
Oh man, that's a shame.
But it just makes you wonder, if it's also delaying, if they have to go get some preservation digs or something, relic digs.
Oh yeah.
But I'm excited. I keep delaying my next Gettysburg trip just to wait,
just to meet that timeline.
But we talked earlier about mentioning Culp's Hill.
Yeah,
that's the other thing. So many people, when that first happened, they're like, "What are we going to do in Gettysburg?" It's that battlefield is huge. You can go to other parts of the battlefield. even the Little Round Top's closed, and so
Well, they got the horse soldier and all that kind of stuff in the town too. If you don't want to do
there's plenty
that,
to do.
goodness,
So
I almost died there. Just walked
the
into a
horse
beautiful room of guns. It's
Yeah.
like the greatest Civil War, and I mean, like I saw a couple that I take particular interest in. P.S. Justice made muskets because I think it's a odd bit of history for the Civil War and like obvious war profiteering, even though they didn't get him on it.
yeah,
He definitely went to court for it. They had two pristine ones right next to each other. I thought, oh my God, this is awesome. They had everything.
yeah.
So yeah, not just the battlefield, but you need to go for the battlefield.
I know.
Other stuff's auxiliary.
No, Gettysburg is a rare circumstance where like the whole town is Civil War town, where every restaurant and gift shop is Civil War related.
I think it's really weird. Like the most, when anybody's like, "Where should we eat in Gettysburg?" Everybody's normally like, "Oh, Rourke's or whatever." I'm like, Montezuma's is pretty good Mexican food. Yeah.
Yeah. You're not far from where
You're right next to S&S.
Lee's headquarters is
Yeah.
right up there.
What's the one that like Clark and Loopold and all them like? Is it Friends or Neighbors or something?
No, that's Topper. Friendlies.
Friendlies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I hear their Reliance Mine Saloon is pretty good too.
They've got a good liquor
Yeah, they do.
Apparently a good wine selection.
Yeah. Okay.
Good wine selection.
Good wine there. On that note, or any. Yeah.
Well, I'd like to add to that, talking
Yeah.
about these places to go. I
Yeah.
personally like Pickett's Mill up in Dallas, Georgia.
Oh yeah.
It's off the beaten path. That battlefield has not changed since
Mhm.
1864, 1865. It's just north of Atlanta. So you get a lot of people coming through there with their families, and they got a lot of good hiking trails through there. And it's real easy to have a weekend living history there, and 50
Yeah.
people to 100 will show up. They're out there for the day just to do some hiking, and they hear musket demonstrations and see the camp set up, and they want to come out and ask some questions and interact with the people. So that's one of my personal favorite battlefields I like to go to.
And that battle's a hot time of year too.
It's in
Georgia.
It's May.
Late May in Georgia.
Yeah, the weather there is no different than it is in
Yeah.
the Bahamas. Less rain, yeah.
Yeah, I hope to do something again there sometime.
Yeah, I think it'd be
'Cause
great.
It's been almost 10 years.
Yeah, well, the late James Wooten was really good about opening that up to the Army Guards and having something there every year.
Yeah.
He was really he really promoted Pickett's Mill.
Yeah. Anybody else?
I got a shout out if nobody else is.
Little shout out, Whit.
I got maybe just one, and this is for Lewis Varnell and his history company in Fort Oglethorpe, Georgia. It's certainly a great museum that he's got. I think they've got uniforms and equipment for 21 KIAs from several different wars. Very interesting, unique museum. It's starts out Civil War and goes up to modern day. But he sells a ton of surplus, a lot of reenacting gear. So definitely, if you get a moment, check his Facebook page out. Stop by the store in Fort Oglethorpe. Definitely, it's worth the time. It's right next to the battlefield. You won't miss it.
And check out the image of Colonel Chubb Sunderland.
That's right. What's interesting? I got an update on that. So, for the audience, there's a very 1960s picture of this man that his name was Chubb Sunderland. He reenacted during the 60s, and he got a picture in his uniform, and he retrofitted stuff he got at Sears and all this kind of stuff. He had like a Boy Scout canteen and but he would go and he saw these original uniforms and tried to mimic that stuff on his like polyester one. Well, it also looks identical to our friend Herb Coates. And so Lewis,
we get a lot of shout outs.
Yeah, that's another shout out. My good friend Herb.
Come back, Herb.
But nonetheless, Lewis gave Herb that frame picture of Chubb, and Herb put it in their house. I think it was like on a mantle or on a shelf or something. And they look almost identical. And he put it up there to see how long Kira, his wife, it took her to notice. Yeah. And I think it was over a year. This was like last week or the week before when he said, yeah, she just noticed. And she noticed it wasn't him. And it was just some random 60s reenactor who's probably long dead at this point, just posting up his picture in the Coates house.
If we ever do another episode, the whole topic will be Civil War doppelganger.
I've got a ton. People send them to me. I don't even go looking for them.
Yeah. Oh, I've seen some of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's some that you. Yeah.
A lot of ugly guys that fought during the Civil War.
Yeah. There
You know?
you go. You go. And then there's handsome
They had
devils
pictures.
like Chad Phillips, who's like the Well, guys, probably should wrap a bow on this one, and really thank you guys all for coming down. I've really enjoyed this.
Oh,
Day
thank
full of
you.
podcasting, and all these episodes will be coming out eventually after I go through editing. But no, I thank you guys, all four of you. Really enjoyed it, and thank you all for listening. But thanks guys.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. All righty, take care, everyone.